Hello everyone, today I want to talk about something we don't always give enough credit to in our journeys: privacy. In a world obsessed with constant sharing, likes, and validation, privacy has become an act of quiet rebellion. But here's the truth: success loves silence. The most powerful things I've achieved didn't begin with applause. They began with a whisper, a decision, and a lot of private discipline. Privacy isn't about secrecy, it's about protection. Protecting your dreams while they're still fragile, protecting your growth while you're still figuring it out, protecting your peace in a world that profits off your chaos. There's something beautifully powerful about holding your cards close, about building your empire behind closed doors, because when you're not distracted by external noise, you hear your own voice clearer. And that voice, that's your compass. Let's be honest, not everyone deserves access to your journey. Some people come to cheer and others to judge, but you decide what gets shared and what stays sacred. That's not being distant, that's being intentional. So own your privacy, respect it, because success is not just about arriving, it's about growing, learning, falling, and rising. And a lot of that happens when no one's watching. Your work speak louder than your posts. Let your results echo louder than your updates. And when it's time, and only when it's time, share it with the world. Because what you build in silence, that's what roars the loudest. Thank you. Privacy often gets misunderstood. People assume that if you're private, you must be hiding something, as if the only reason to stay quiet is to conceal. But that's not true. Privacy is not secrecy, it's protection. It's the conscious choice to guard something important, something personal, something in progress. Just like we don't plant a seed and yank it out of the soil every day to show how it's growing, shouldn't feel pressured to constantly expose the early stages of our dreams, healing, or plans. Some things need time, some things need space. When something is valuable, you protect it. We lock our homes, we put passwords on our phones, we ensure our assets. Not because we're secretive, but because we're protective. So why should it be any different when it comes to our peace, our goals, our inner growth? Being private isn't about hiding your life. It's about preserving the energy it takes to build it. Privacy acts as a boundary, a filter between what deserves to be shared and what deserves to be nurtured in silence. Early stages of anything, whether it's a relationship, a project, or personal growth, are delicate. That's when outside voices, opinions, and doubts can do the most damage. People project their own fears and insecurities without realizing it. And if you're too open too soon, their noise can drown out your clarity. Privacy gives your ideas the chance to breathe before the world tries to label, question, or shrink them. It allows you to move at your own pace, not at the speed of public expectation. There is also deep self-respect in choosing not to explain yourself all the time. You don't owe the world a roadmap to your process. You're allowed to have chapters that belong only to you. Privacy says, this is mine and I'm not ready or required to share it yet. That boundary creates safety. It gives you the freedom to fail privately, to evolve without scrutiny, and to change your mind without needing permission. And that kind of freedom, that's where real strength begins to form. What the world often calls mysterious or guarded is sometimes just discipline. It's the decision to protect your vision from premature exposure. Not everything needs to be performed. Not every step needs to be narrated. Some of your most powerful moves will happen in silence, and that silence doesn't make them any less real. In fact, it often makes them more impactful because they were built with intention, not performance. In today's hyper-connected world, we've been conditioned to believe that visibility equals progress. If you're not constantly updating the world about your goals, your wins, or even your hustle, then maybe you're not really doing anything worthwhile. But the truth is, real success doesn't need a spotlight to grow. It needs silence. The kind of silence that allows you to focus, to build, to fail without judgment, to rise without distraction. In silence, there is space to be imperfect, to experiment, and to refine yourself away from the expectations of others. There's an unspoken pressure to perform success before we've even earned it. We feel the need to announce plans before they're solid, to post progress before it's real, and to chase validation before the work is done. But the most powerful transformations don't happen on camera. They happen in quiet rooms, on sleepless nights, messy notebooks, and in the corners of our lives where no one is watching. That's where grit is born. That's where true alignment is found. Silence gives us the gift of clarity, and with clarity comes real momentum. When you keep your goals close and your process private, something shifts. Pressure to impress disappears. The temptation to compare diminishes. And suddenly, you're working for your own standard, not for applause, not for attention, for something deeper. You stop performing and start becoming. And that shift, that's when success starts to root itself. Not just in the visible wins, but in your character, your choices, your discipline, and your inner peace. Think about the great moments of evolution in your life. They didn't happen when the crowd was cheering. They happened when you were still figuring it all out. Success doesn't demand a performance. It demands commitment, patience, and trust in the process. Silence is the sacred space where that commitment lives. It doesn't mean you're hiding. It means you're building quietly, intentionally, powerfully. And yes, there will be moments when sharing is important, when your journey can inspire, uplift, or empower others, but not before it's fully formed, not while it's still vulnerable. Because what the world sees as overnight success is often the result of years of private effort, silent battles, and invisible victories. And that's why the silence matters, because that's where the real work lives. In a world that never stops talking, listening to your own voice has become one of the most underrated superpowers. We live in an era of endless opinions, from social media algorithms to cultural expectations, from well-meaning family members to anonymous critics behind screens. Everyone has something to say about how you should live, what you should pursue, success should look like. But here's the thing, only one voice truly knows the path that's right for you, yours. That inner voice, that's not noise. You prioritize privacy, you reduce the volume of the outside world long enough to actually hear yourself. You stop reacting to trends and start responding to your own truth. You get to ask yourself the hard questions. Is this what I want? Or is this what's expected of me? Am I choosing this path because it excites me? Or because I'm afraid of disappointing someone? These aren't questions that get answered in group chats or on timelines. They get answered in solitude, in silence, and in self-trust. Listening to your own voice isn't always easy. Sometimes it contradicts everything you've been taught to believe. It may ask you to slow down when the world tells you to speed up. It may guide you toward a path that looks completely different from everyone else's. Your voice, your instincts, your intuition is there for a reason. It's rooted in your experiences, your desires, your pain, your purpose. It doesn't speak in trends, it speaks in truth. When you create space to hear it, you begin to align your decisions with your deeper self, not with temporary approval. There's also a kind of freedom that comes from making choices from your own inner guidance. It removes the fear of judgment because you're no longer seeking permission, removes the pressure to please everyone because you understand that not everyone is meant to understand your journey. When your voice becomes your compass, you stop needing a map drawn by someone else. You might not have all the answers, but you trust your ability to figure it out as you go. And that's the kind of confidence that doesn't come from applause. It comes from alignment. The most authentic paths are rarely the loudest, often the quiet ones that begin with a gut feeling, a private decision, or a silent realization that you're meant for something more. You listen to your voice before you ask the world what it thinks. You gain clarity, you gain control, and more than anything, you gain peace because you're no longer living someone else's version of success. You're finally living your own. We often grow up being told to be open, to share, as if access equals authenticity. But the older you get, the more you realize not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life. Your energy, your growth, your healing, your success, those are sacred things. They're not for public consumption. They're not for everyone's opinion. You get to choose who earns the right to witness your journey. That's not arrogance. That's boundaries. And boundaries are strength in motion. The truth is, some people are in your life just to observe, not to support. Some will clap for you only when it's convenient for them. Others will show up with curiosity, not care. And when you're too quick to share everything with everyone, you give people the power to misinterpret, criticize, or diminish things they don't even understand. Privacy is a filter. It protects your peace by limiting access to your process. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you're growing, especially if they've never invested in your becoming. It's easy to confuse visibility with connection. Sharing your deepest goals, dreams, or struggles with the wrong people can drain you more than silence ever will. Sometimes silence isn't emptiness, it's self-respect. It's knowing when to keep things sacred. And when you begin to treat your journey like it's worthy of protection, the quality of your circle naturally shifts. You stop chasing approval and you start choosing alignment. The people who truly deserve access to your life are the ones who honor your boundaries, not bulldoze through them. We live in a time when people feel entitled to every part of your story. If you're not posting it, it didn't happen. If you're not sharing your struggles, you must be hiding something. But real power isn't in overexposure, it's in discretion. When you move in silence, you move without interference. You grow without judgment. You fail without spectacle, and you rise without noise. It's not about isolating yourself. It's about guarding what matters until it's strong enough to stand on its own. At the heart of it all is this simple truth: access is a privilege, not a right. Your time, your attention, your space, those are valuable. Not everyone gets to touch them. And the sooner you realize that, the stronger and more focused your journey becomes. The less you feel the need to overshare, the more intentional your energy becomes. And intentional energy, that's how you build things that last quietly, deliberately, unapologetically. Growth isn't always loud. In fact, the most important parts of your evolution often happen in complete solitude, when there's no applause, no cameras, no one validating your effort. Solitude gives you the space to meet yourself honestly and unapologetically. It's where you confront your patterns, your fears, your triggers, and your truths. It's not glamorous and it's definitely not easy. But real growth doesn't happen in front of an audience. It happens when you sit with your discomfort and choose to face it rather than run from it. We often romanticize transformation, but true growth is messy. It looks like self-doubt, overthinking, and quiet nights spent questioning everything. It looks like walking away from comfort, even when it feels safer than what's ahead. And that kind of emotional, spiritual, and mental work, it demands stillness. It demands isolation from the noise of other people's opinions. Because when you're constantly surrounded by distraction, you start molding yourself into what the world wants, not into who you're really meant to be. Solitude is not loneliness, it's sacred. It's a conscious choice to withdraw from the world, not because you're lost, but because you're learning. In solitude, your mind becomes sharper, your intuition stronger. You begin to separate your voice from the voices that have shaped you. And with every moment of honest silence, you peel away the layers of expectation and ego. You start understanding what truly matters to you, not just what you've been told to chase. People sometimes fear being alone because they associate it with emptiness. What if solitude is actually the space where you become whole? Growth requires stillness, not to isolate, but to integrate, to absorb lessons, to reflect on past versions of yourself, and to build a new foundation from within. You can't become your highest self while constantly seeking outside validation. You need to go inward first. That's where resilience is cultivated, where clarity is found, and where breakthroughs begin. And yes, there will be moments in that solitude that feel heavy. You'll want to reach for distractions, people, noise, approval. But if you can sit through that silence long enough, something shifts. You stop running from yourself. You start listening. And the person who rises from that quiet space, she's wiser, more grounded, and far more powerful than the one who went in, because growth that's earned in solitude isn't shaken by the world. It's shaped by purpose. In today's world, it's easy to mistake social media for reality. The platforms we scroll through daily have become highlight reels of success, beauty, hustle, and perfection. Let's be clear, likes are not legacy. Followers are not fulfillment. And social media is not your scoreboard. It can be a tool, yes, platform to amplify your voice or your work, but it was never meant to define your worth or measure your growth. Your value exists far beyond a screen. We've entered a culture where every move feels like it needs to be announced. every achievement posted, every struggle shared, every moment curated. And in that process, begin to internalize the idea that if it's not online, it doesn't count. But real success isn't built on aesthetics or engagement. It's built on consistency, unseen effort, on choices made when no one's watching. The danger is when we start chasing content over character and validation over values. The truth is, some of your most powerful wins will never be posted. There'll be quiet moments of resilience, decisions made in private, chapters of struggle you survived without applause. And that doesn't make them any less valuable. In fact, it makes them more. Because what's real doesn't need to be broadcast to be meaningful. You don't need the internet's approval to legitimize your journey. You only need your own belief in it. Social media can easily trick us into comparison mode. You start seeing someone else's filtered life and wondering if you're falling behind. But remember, no one is obligated to post their failures, doubts, rock bottom moments. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's edited trailer. That's not only unfair, it's dangerous to your confidence. True success is lived, felt, and earned, not posted, scheduled, and promoted. What's real doesn't beg for attention, it simply becomes undeniable. So instead of using platforms as your mirror, use them as tools, and tools only. Let your focus be on the work, not the performance. Let your joy be internal, not just shareable. And remind yourself daily, you are not here to impress the algorithm. You are here to build a life that matters. Because the world doesn't need more perfect posts. It needs more people rooted in authenticity, who know their worth with or without a double tap. There's a quiet kind of strength in letting your work do the talking. In a time where many people talk about what they plan to do, few actually follow through and deliver. That's where the difference lies. In execution over explanation. You don't need to explain your every move, defend your goals, or narrate your progress. Because when your results speak, they say everything that needs to be said clearly, loudly, and without compromise. Too often we fall into the trap prematurely announcing our dreams. We seek reassurance before we even take the first step. But the truth is, the world doesn't owe you applause for potential. It responds to proof. That doesn't mean your dreams aren't worthy. It just means they need to be built, not broadcast. There's power in waiting, power in holding your vision close until it's strong enough to stand on its own. And when it finally does, that's when people pay attention, not because you told them to, but because they can't ignore it. When you focus less on validation and more on value, everything changes. You stop performing and you start producing. You stop needing to convince others and you begin to convince yourself. And here's the secret: confidence grows in the doing, not in the telling. You don't need to explain why you're working late, why you turned down that offer, or why you're building something unconventional. Let them wonder, let them assume, because the clarity will come not through your words, but through your results. There's also integrity in silence, in choosing to prove yourself through consistency, not commentary. Some of the most iconic successes weren't hyped. They were earned step by step behind the scenes. And when they finally showed up, they didn't need an introduction. The work introduced them. That's what happens when you let your results speak. You become undeniable, not because you've talked the loudest, but because you've delivered the most. So stay grounded, stay focused. Keep building. Your goals don't need to be paraded. They need to be protected. Let your discipline be private, your hustle be quiet, and your milestones be proof. Because at the end of the day, results don't need captions. They leave impact, and impact is louder than any announcement ever will be. Privacy isn't about hiding. It's about holding. It's about holding space for your growth, your plans, your pain, your power. When you keep certain things to yourself, you're not being secretive. You're being strategic. Power doesn't always need to be displayed. It needs to be developed. And that development often happens in silence, away from distractions, and out of reach from those who don't have your best interest at heart. When you keep your inner world protected, you allow your strength to expand without interference. There is something undeniably powerful about not being easily read. When people don't know your next move, they can't interfere with it. When they can't predict your path, they can't block it. Privacy is what allows you to work in peace and emerge in power. You don't need to announce every idea or defend every decision. By choosing not to share everything, you take control of your narrative. You decide what gets seen and what stays sacred. And in a world that demands constant visibility, that choice alone is an act of power. The most impactful people don't show all their steps. They reveal results. They let their work speak louder than their explanations. They're not driven by the need to be seen, but by the desire to be effective. When you operate from privacy, your energy is preserved, your direction is clear, and your focus is laser sharp. You're no longer scattering your energy trying to please or prove. You're channeling it toward progress, purpose, and peace. And that is where real momentum is built. In privacy, your confidence becomes internal. It's not based on applause or outside validation, but on your own commitment to your goals. You begin to trust yourself more because your choices are rooted in clarity, not crowd approval. You don't second guess yourself every time someone offers an unsolicited opinion. Instead, you move with calm, quiet authority. And that authority doesn't come from dominance or noise. It comes from self-awareness. The more private your process, the stronger your inner voice becomes. So much of modern culture wants you to believe that sharing everything is strength, that transparency equals truth. Strength isn't always shown. Sometimes it's contained, refined, and protected. Privacy gives you the room to evolve on your own terms, without pressure, without performance. Power that grows from that kind of freedom, it lasts because it wasn't built on attention. It was built on authenticity.